Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Hope y'all having a great day. And with no further ado, with no further ado, let's get into my NFC East predictions. Did AFC East yesterday, and throughout the rest of this week and next week, I'll be doing my division by division predictions. So stay tuned for the rest of the NFL. But starting off with the Eagles, who I think will beat Washington in week one. I do think this offense will be better than last year. I mean, it can't possibly be worse. But I am still concerned with Jalen Hurts and the fact that, he was, not that great last year. I know people might say it was, the offensive line, but I do also think that, maybe Hurts, you know, wasn't playing the best football because the team around him is not as great. And we'll see this upcoming year if he can go back to like 2022, 24 Jalen Hurts, where he was playing amazing and really efficient football. I do think they get off to a 2-0 start beating the Titans. That should be a fun game, especially Robert Saleh, who, with the Niners, having, a lot of time against these Eagles. But I do think they get the win there. I do think they lose to Chicago on the road. Will be a tough place to play. Monday Night Football. Um, I think the Bears will be ready for that game. They will be ready for an Eagles team that, remember, they went into Lincoln Financial Field, which is one of the tougher places to play in the NFL, and won that game. I think the Bears get this one, and then I think the Rams do win this game, which, might be like, well, no, really, but I mean, they almost beat the Eagles last year. Outside of a historic collapse. And I mean, the team got better, and I think the Rams are these Super Bowl favorites right now. We'll see if they actually make it all the way. But I do think Philly does have a tough stretch after that early couple of games. The London game, I think they get back on track with a win against the Jags. Jacksonville will, I think, be really talented this year, but I think Philly, higher ceiling, gets the job done. Carolina and Dallas, I think they get back-to-back wins, putting them at 5-2 through 7 games. Carolina, I mean, it should be a good game. Remember a couple of years ago, the Panthers went into Philly, when the Eagles were on the road to um, winning the Super Bowl, and the Panthers, were really, really giving them everything they could. Philly barely won that game, but I do think the Eagles at home continue this winning streak. I do think they split with Washington. I don't think they'll sweep them. They haven't done that since 2023. So the last 2 years, despite how bad Washington was last year, they still beat them. I know it was in week 18 when Philly was resting their starters, but, you know, Washington did pull off the upset. So I do think the Commanders, a much healthier team and better roster rise, will get this job done. And then right before the bye, I think Philly gets the win to be 6-3, which, a really good start to the season. It's a tough stretch from like the Bears to the Jags, and then even, counting in Carolina in the 3 division games, it really is a tough stretch. I feel like early on, but Philly has the roster, has the talent and coaching to get through this before their bye with less than 3 or less wins, I think so. And then the second half of the season, I think they beat the Steelers. Should be a fun game. Remember a couple of years ago when both teams were really good, and on the top of their divisions, it was a really good game. But Philly just talent wise was better and was able to coast to that win. Mike McCarthy has some history against the Eagles from his time in Dallas, so maybe we could see something there. I think they split with Dallas once again. I think they beat the Cardinals, beat Indianapolis. I think they lose to Seattle. A Saturday game should be a fun atmosphere. I think they beat the Texans, beat the Giants, which I think would put them at what, 11, 12-4 maybe? 11-5. And I'm going to say they split with the Giants. The NFC East very tough to pick because I feel like all 4 teams are really good. And I think 11-6, which is the same record they had last year, but I think this offense will be better. I think the defense will be as great as it has been under Vic Fangio. I just think it's a tougher schedule. They have a lot of tough games, and in a division where the other 3 teams I think will be better this upcoming year, it really does seem that like Philly's not going to coast to an NFC East title, and it will be a lot more competitive than really what it was last year, especially after Philly had that great start. They kind of didn't really need much because the rest of the team were so bad. Moving on to the Cowboys, who obviously have splitting with the Eagles. Week 1, I think they get the win in New York, which might seem like really, but Dallas just kind of owned the Giants in MetLife for the most part. And while it is John Harbaugh's debut game as a head coach, I like Dallas. That defense will be sound, and that offense is one of the best. I think they're going to be ready to play amazingly. Washington, I think they get up to a 2-0 start, which it's always important in the NFL to get off to really good starts because it sets you up to, you know, not have to climb your way back. The Brazil game, I'm going to say the Ravens. I just think better team, both roster wise, coaching wise, and I think Dallas will take on a really talented defense that might give them some headway, and I think the Ravens offense will be able to play really well against a really talented defense. Moving on to the Texans game, 2-1 here. Should be an interesting game, Battle of Texas. I'm gonna say it's really a coin flip. I feel like I'm gonna say the Texans at home, which might seem a little confusing, but I do think that defense, which that's back to back really talented defenses they're going to have to face in Baltimore and Houston. The Texans defense, I think, is the best, and then I think this offense will be better to where they'll have the running game going. Stroud, I think, will be able to stand in the pocket more and play more as a pocket passer, which is his strength, and I think Houston gets the win. I do think they beat the Bucks on Thursday night. Should be a fun game, but I'm not very high on this Bucks team with all the controversy this offseason with Vita Vea requesting a trade, Baker not getting a contract, and essentially seemingly going to play on his last year, along with I don't like Todd Bowles as a head coach. I don't like Zach Robinson as the OC. I'm just not very high on this Tampa team that should be healthier, but with bad coaching, teams always find ways to underperform to their talent, and I think that'll happen again. Dallas at Green Bay should be a fun one here. Love Prescott. I'm gonna say Dallas gets the win, which might seem crazy to say, but I'm not very high on Green Bay. I think they have a really high ceiling of like 7 wins, or really high floor, I should say, of 7 wins. But I'm just not high on this team. Like, yes, Micah, or no, Micah probably won't be back for this game, which could pay dividends. Um, yeah, I think Dallas's defense will be better from last year. So, Green Bay isn't going to have an easy job going down the field. And I think that's the real big difference is that Dallas's defense will be better at this point than when the 2 teams played last year, while Green Bay's will be worse. And I think the Packers possibly could get off to a hard, start to where, it really is tough for them to come back. I do think they beat the Cardinals, which would 1, 2, 3 put them at 5-3. And then this Colts game, I feel like it'll be an interesting game. Indy, who knows, what's going on with the QB situation and how the team looks. I'm gonna say the Colts at home. I feel like I've been a little too harsh for Indy. I'm gonna say Dallas loses that one. Moving on to week 10 as we enter the second half of the season. I think they beat the Niners. I know a lot of people are high on San Francisco, but I'm not. I think this team will definitely regress from last year, and I think definitely won't be as good, especially with all the injuries they've already suffered. And I think this could be another weird year where like they're not that great, but everybody's just blaming it on the injuries instead of the roster construction this team has built. I think they beat the Titans, which I think would put them at what 8-3 or no 9-3, right? 9-3 or 8-4, 8-4, 8-4, and then I think they lose to Seattle. It'll be a tough Monday night game, especially after that Thanksgiving game against the Eagles. They then have to play a week later at Lumen Field, one of the toughest places to play. I think they lose that one. I think they off the bye lose to the Rams, which crushing defeat. 8-6 here, so gonna have to kick in a high gear. I do think they beat Jacksonville to get to 9-6. The Giants game will be interesting. Um, both teams. Remember last year, this game early on in the season was a Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, like they were just bombing it. I do think, hmm, I do think Dallas gets the win there, but loses to Washington. Yeah, I think they sweep the Giants. I'm not high on New York this year. I think they definitely will be better than last year, but I also think the team won't be as good as people have believed them to be just because they brought in John Harbaugh and improved the roster. I think it's still going to be a transition year, and I think Dallas 10-7 is a really good season. They don't win the division, but I do think they definitely will compete for it and at least make the playoffs this upcoming year. Moving on to the Commanders, which they start off with 2 L's, which is it's a tough schedule. And I'm sorry, I think they start 0-3, which hard start, but should get better. Do you think they beat um, Indy and New York? That London game and then home against the Giants, back-to-back wins to get to 2-3. I didn't think they lose to the Niners, dropping to 2-4 before their bye, and then 3-4. They get a huge upset win against the Eagles. But this is a tough schedule for Washington. I think they lose to the Rams. I think they split with the Giants like they have for a while, which would drop them to what? I think 3-6, which not a great start, but it's a really tough schedule. So like where do you have them getting like maybe one of these division games, maybe they pull off an upset against Seattle or San Francisco in the Bay. Maybe they beat the Rams, or maybe they sweep the Giants. Like you could switch a lot of these games because they are a lot of close. They are really close, but it's a tough schedule for Washington to start off with. But I think they do beat the Bengals, which I think at home they get that win. I think they beat the Cardinals. I think they beat the Titans. Lose to Houston. Beat Atlanta to I think get to what? Because I think they'd be what 5-6, 8-7, 8 and. Let me see. They are 7-7 after a really good stretch off the bye. I think they'll lose to Minnesota. This Jacksonville game could be the decider on whether they're potentially playoff bound or not. I'm gonna say mm, Washington, Jacksonville, just the Jags more. So 8-9 for Washington. It is an improved season. I think the Commanders will be improved. It's a really tough stretch early on. I mean, Philly, Dallas, Seattle. Then they play the Niners, the Rams, Philly twice. Um, it's a really tough early stretch, but if they're able to get if they have like 3, maybe 4 wins, I feel like through week 9, there's a good chance that with that second half schedule, they definitely could um emerge in the playoffs. It's just a really tough stretch early on. Like Philly, Dallas, Seattle in their first 3 weeks. Then they play San Fran, Philly, and LA in another 3 week span with a bye in between the San Francisco and Philly games. So two really hard stretches in those first 9 games could hurt could hurt Washington. But if they're able to win, more than what I say, because I only think they win one of those games, they definitely could. They definitely could emerge. What's the word? They definitely could emerge. Yeah, they definitely could emerge as a playoff threat this upcoming year. And then finally, the New York Giants, who I have going 2-4 in the division, which does seem possible. They could definitely split with the Cowboys, but I don't know. I think they lose to the Rams. I do think they beat Tennessee and Arizona to get their first 2 wins of the season. 2-3. Saints game should be a fun one, but I think New Orleans gets the win there. Then Houston gets the win there, which would drop them to what 2-5 before the bye week. They beat Philly, and they lose to Philly, beat Washington, so 3-6 up to this point. 3-6. They take on a Jags team that I'm higher on, so 3-7. The Colts game can be interesting. Daniel Jones taking on his old team. I think the Colts get the win there. San Francisco, yeah, I'm gonna say the Giants do get a win there. Could be a Niners team that maybe is banged up, and the Giants could take advantage. I think they lose to Seattle, beat the Browns, but lose to the Lions, which I think would put them at what 5-12 or 6-11 actually 6-11. I think that's honestly the perfect season for the Giants. Like, I don't think they're a playoff team the way a lot of people want to believe they are. Like, I don't think the Giants are going to be like competing for a playoff spot late in the season, but I do think they definitely could be a team that, like, late in the season, taking on these teams that maybe have playoff ambitions, they could pull off the upset. And yeah, those are my NFC East predictions. I got the Eagles finishing in first place, which repeating for a third consecutive year at 11-6. Dallas 10-7. Hopefully, is good enough to make the playoffs. I mean, it's a really competitive NFC, but like they definitely could make it. Washington 8-9 definitely could be better, but a hard schedule early on might lead to them not having enough wins late in the season to get it done. And then the Giants finishing 6-11, I think is a good record for them. They improved drastically from the last couple of years where they've just been some of the worst teams in the league. But they're not going to be competing with like the playoff teams like a lot of people want to believe that they will. But should be a really good schedule. I mean, a really good season for the Giants where you see improvement with Jackson Dart, Cam Scatterboo, Malik Neighbors. Hopefully the defense will get better, but I do think it's still a tough season for the Giants. And yeah, those are my NFC East predictions. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Hope you guys like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Trying to trying to get more viewership and more subscribers to join this channel. So let people know. Check me out on YouTube, TikToks, Instagram, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow for my AFC North predictions. But until then, hope you have a great day and bye.